This, my friends, was the first passage in the mock. It dealt with Plato and Socrates, and Plato's theory of what we have come to know as the game theory, basically. Now, if you haven't heard of the game theory, I could tell you this much, that it's a study of strategic decision making, and basically it's gone on to be used as it has gone on to be used as an umbrella term for the logical side of decision making, I can say, which deals with the way that people behave, humans, or let's say even computers behave while making decisions, right? So, and that is exactly what the passage was all about also, when it talked about a soldier on the front lines. What would be the argument going around in his head? Would he want to escape the battle, or would he want to stay there and stand and fight? And how other people use this theory, even before Plato and Socrates existed, and how people use this. For example, there was this example of the Spanish conqueror Cortez, and how he used the game theory to convince his soldiers to stay and fight, right? So that's what the passage was all about. We can move on to the first question then, which is right here. It says, according to the passage, which of the following is the pattern of reasoning that a soldier at the front lines would employ? So before we move on to the actual answer, let's go back to the passage and think about this particular part of the passage where it says that what would the soldier do, or what would be his pattern of reasoning. Let's read what is going on in the soldier's mind. Now it says here that there is this, Plato has his disciple Socrates worry about the following situation. And then what is the situation? It's consider a soldier at the front waiting with his comrades, to repulse an enemy attack. Now what goes on in his mind is, it may occur to him that if the defense is likely to be successful, then it isn't very probable that his own personal contribution will be essential. Now what does this mean? It means that, let's say that the soldier and his army win in defending the city, right, from the attackers, or from the people who are going to from the enemy, basically. Then it's not necessarily that he will have a lot of personal contribution, right? But then if he stays, he has the risk of being killed or wounded, right? It says that right here. He runs the risk of being killed or wounded, apparently for no point. So what he's saying on one hand is that even if he partakes in the battle, and the defense is going to be let's say likely successful, still he has the risk of losing his life, or getting hurt, right? And for no reason whatsoever. On the other hand, if the enemy is going to win the battle, right, if these people lose the battle, let's say if the soldier and his army lose the battle, then obviously his chances of death or injury are higher, right? As I can mark here, as is said in the passage, right? It says that here, his chances of death or injury are higher still. And again, that's clearly to no point, right? So what he basically is saying, what the soldier basically thinks is that I'm in a no-win situation, right? Even if my army wins, I'm going to lose somehow or the other, because I'm going to get hurt. There is a chance of that, or I might get killed. If we are defeated, then the chances of getting killed or dying are much more higher than before. So that's what, and so what happens is, now based on this reasoning, because he thinks that all of the other soldiers are also exactly thinking what he is thinking, that is why it would appear that the soldier is better off running away regardless of who is going to win the battle, right? And if that's how he goes on to say, Plato here, that if all of the soldiers were to think of the same let's say line of logic, follow the same line of logic, they would all run away even before the enemy attacked. So that in mind, now let's read the options. The first one says that he would disassociate from participation in a group activity due to risk to life and limb. Yes, to this part, till this part I should say, the option is correct, but let's go on. Assuming that the majority of the group would do the same. Is the soldier assuming that the majority of the group is doing the same? No. This is what later Plato says, that this is what the rest of the group would do if that particular soldier is also thinking the same, right? So the soldier does not assume that the majority of group is doing the same. Then B says, consider the consequences of an act of bravado, and then weigh these against the consequences of an act of cowardice. Is this what he's doing? Is he comparing what he would do if he were to stand and fight, and if he were to run away? No, he's not making that comparison. He's only thinking about running away, right? That is what. And if he stands, so there's no mention basically of act of bravado here, right? That he's not trying to be brave. He's just comparing standing there or running away, not being brave or you being a coward, right? Uh, Now C says, take a decision based on a flawed argument that no act of his will have any ramifications on the culmination of a future event. For one thing, this is not what the soldier is thinking, right? He's not thinking that whatever I do, it's going to have a bad effect. It's going to have no effect on the battle, of course, right? What he does say is that if I partake in the battle, no matter what the outcome, it's always going to, I am always going to be the loser here. So with that in mind, we can safely eliminate C and take D as the answer, which is the answer here. He says, attempt to evade the ultimate no-win situation based on the analysis of his eventual involvement. That if he is involved in the entire war, in the battle, whatever happens, it's ultimately a no-win situation for him, and this is what he's trying to avoid. And this is why the answer for this question is option D. This question reads, according to the passage, anticipation on the part of the soldier would result in what? Would it result in the commander getting upbeat, the enemy staging a retreat, the soldier rationalizing his action, or soldiers being left with a reason to fight? Now let's read this part of the paragraph here, where he says that what we have here in this case is a case in which the interaction of many individually rational decision making processes on the part of the soldier, one process per soldier, that's what it says here ahead, produces an outcome intended by no one. That's what the passage says when it talks about the soldiers making that there is a need for the soldiers to make a rational decision, right? This is what the author is suggesting, that in the case that the soldier anticipates, as is mentioned earlier here, that if each soldier were to anticipate this sort of reasoning on the part of others, all will quickly reason themselves into a panic, and their horrified commander will have a riot on his hands before the enemy has even fired a shot. So the soldier that has been talked about in the passage, if he thinks that, see, let me run away because I am trying to save my life, and then he anticipates that, yeah, obviously everyone else is going to do the same, right? Everyone else is going to run away because even they are scared about their lives. So this anticipation will lead to everyone running away. So what does the author say is that there should be a rationalization of his decision. That is what he should do. Even then he gives examples of what people do to avoid this. See, it says here further in the place that I'm marking, it says most armies, I'm sorry, not there, it says most armies try to avoid this problem just as Cortes did. Since they can't usually make retreat physically impossible, they make it economically impossible. And then it says, then standing and fighting is each soldier's individually rational course of action. After all, this is what the author says should happen if there is anticipation on the part of the soldier, right? So we can clearly mark C as the answer and do away with A, B and D. Even then, if you were to read it, the commander getting upbeat, no, it doesn't follow that. If the soldier is anticipating something, the commander getting upbeat, that does not follow. The enemy would stage a retreat, no, neither does that follow. And D, absolutely, the soldier being left with a reason to fight, no, he would actually want to run away, but then what we are saying is that he should rationalize his action, making C the correct answer for this question. The question reads here, which of the following ideas are demonstrated by the actions of the Spanish conqueror Cortes according to the passage, right? Now let's go into the passage and read that part where it talks about the Spanish conqueror, right? It says here, thus the Spanish conqueror Cortes, and let me mark this particular part for you. So the Spanish conqueror Cortes, when landing in Mexico with a small force, who had good reason to fear the capacity to repel attacks from the far more numerous Aztecs. Now, let me put this in short for you. Basically, what used to happen was Cortes with his Spanish soldiers, they used to land at a particular Mexican coast, and there would be a whole army, let's say, or a whole a large population of Aztecs waiting there to repel them, to send them away, right? But then what he used to do was something really, really interesting. He used to remove the risk that his troops might think their way into a retreat by burning the ships on which they had landed. So what Cortez did was he burned the ships on which they had recently landed. This left the soldiers with no choice but to, because as it says, the passage further says, retreat was rendered physically impossible, and so the Spanish soldiers had no better way but to stand and fight, and actually fight with much more motivation as they could muster, because now they knew that they had no way out. So if they did not repel the attack, they would lose, right? And furthermore, this had another effect. What Cortez did, the burning of the ships, had another effect, let's say a psychological effect on the mind of the Aztecs as well. As soon as they saw that this person is absolutely confident of the victory, that and so confident that he has actually, let's say, removed his only way of retreating, they would actually, let's say, be scared of Cortez and they would run away, right? So that is why that they also thought that it's not wise to attack such an opponent who has, a good reason to believe that he's so sure that he's not going to lose, right? And so this brings us back to the question where it says, which of the following ideas are demonstrated by the actions that Cortez did, or that he took? Now, A says eliminating the possibility of a retreat will always demotivate soldiers. No, demotivating his soldiers anyway was not his main viewpoint. What he wanted instead was that they become so motivated that they just stand and fight there, right? So we can eliminate this option. Then B says soldiers do not need such motivation. No, we know that soldiers actually need such motivation. That is why the example has been given. Soldiers are usually overconfident. No, certainly not. They were very scared. They would want to retreat. They would want to actually run away in the ships that they had come with. But then D is the answer for this question, which says strategy may be more important than skill. Yes, what Cortez demonstrated was that when you have a good strategy, it's much more important than having the skill to win a particular decision. So even when it talks about decision making, the passage, it means that strategy is more important than skill, making D the answer to this question. According to the passage, which of the following is true about Henry V? Now, this particular play by Shakespeare, there is a mention of it in the passage here in the last paragraph. Let's read that part. It says, another classic source that reproduces exactly the sequence of reasoning. Now, what's the sequence of reasoning that is reproduced here? If you were to go back, it says most armies try to avoid this problem, just as Cortez did. What they do is they shoot deserters, right? So if somebody is trying to run away, he knows that the cost of running is at least as high as the cost of staying, and that is why the soldier would not run. So back here to this part of the passage where it says that in Henry V, Shakespeare has the victor of Agincourt explain his decision to slaughter French prisoners. So there is this battle of Agincourt, and the victor there explains his decision as to why he's slaughtering his prisoners, French prisoners, right? In full view of the enemy as follows. Now his own troops observe that the prisoners have been killed, and they know that the enemy has observed this, that the enemy has also seen this. So if they were to lose and the enemy were to capture them, they know what punishment is in store for them, right? That's what it says here, that prisoners have been killed, and observe that the enemy has observed this. Therefore, they know what fate will await them at the enemy's hands if they don't win, right? That's exactly what I said. So metaphorically, what Shakespeare says has happened here is their boats have been burned, exactly the way that Cortez, who has been mentioned in the passage, used to burn his boats so that his soldiers would not escape. So the French prisoners died as a means by which Henry sent a signal to his own troops, thereby changing their incentives. This is the important part of the passage where it says that what he does is he changes their incentives. He provides them motivation enough to stand their ground and fight, right? So back to the question then, it says, according to the passage, which of the following is true about Henry V? Retreat is made physically impossible? No. There is no mention here about retreat being made physically impossible. In fact, this was what was mentioned regarding Cortez, right? The cost of running is as high as the cost of staying? No, because B and then D, retreat is economically impossible. Both B and D have been mentioned in view of those armies which shoot deserters, right? And that was mentioned earlier. So what we are left with is C, which is the answer to this question. A change in impetus has been achieved. There is a lot of motivation now in the soldiers because they know they cannot risk the chance of losing the fight and being captured by the French and being killed. So that is why a change in impetus has been there. Incentive, that is what we read in the passage, right? Right here, there is a change in incentive, and therefore the answer to this question has to be option C.